Welcome to Squatch-D TV. Exploring the Bigfoot mystery each week with your hosts, veteran researcher, author, and TV personality, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls, and from the Bigfoot Research Project of Kentucky, Chris Bennett. Sit back and buckle up as we bring you guests from around North America discussing the Bigfoot phenomena, but not without a few laughs, too. Here are your hosts, Steve and Chris.
And good evening, cyberspace. Welcome to Squatch-D TV for today's date, January 21st, 2024. I'm the host, your guide, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls, along with my co-host right down there, Mr. Chris Bennett.
What's going on, man? I hope you guys are staying warmer than we are.
That sucks.
We have got this morning. I looked last time when I looked online, it was -1 degrees in Kentucky. -1. Now that is cold. Oh, you had six degrees?
We're at 6 degrees right now, looking right at it.
Well, I think, yeah, we warmed up a little bit today, and thank goodness we're going to see a little break, a little warmer weather next week. But man, the Squatches out there have got to be cold. I mean, I hope they had a good thick winter coat, or they're holed up in a cave somewhere, because man, it's cold.
Sure is. Luckily in the next few days, by Wednesday, it's supposed to break. So we'll be actually in the 40s on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And we'll be looking forward to that, obviously, a little bit.
Yeah.
Get some of the snow out of here and whatnot.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got a heck of a show lined up. Our guest is already checked in downstairs, Mr. Chris Contreras. Hello, Chris. How are you?
Howdy, everybody. Good evening.
And so here we are. Let's do our usual thing, Chris. Let's do the roll call.
Oh, yeah.
So, again, Relic Hominin kind of stopped in, left a message. Walter Kroll is the first live audience participant in tonight. And we got Low Rider. Tom Conley. These guys are all channel members, and they're here mega early. Grasshopper, Sharon. Ristol. Good to see you again, Ristol. We're starting to see Ristol a little more often. That's awesome.
New faces here. That's great.
Tennessee Cherokee. He's kind of a recent addition to the crew as well. Hello. We got Sharon and, of course, Jay Fritz, our good friend.
Jay.
And we got John, Sasquatch Wizard Adirondacks. Good to see you, my brother. We will be out in the springtime, most definitely. Of course, Jen is hanging out in there.
Jen.
What else? Tim Vogel. Tim, how are you? From good old Massachusetts. He was on an episode a ways back.
Welcome. Good to see you.
Of course, we got our good friend Mike Ann out there, Tactical Bigfoot Research. What's going on, my brother? Arthur Watch in the house as well.
Arthur.
Yeah.
Golly, there's a lot of people here right at 8 o'clock. It's nice.
Heather's channel, greetings from sunny Scotland, 2 o'clock here in the morning. Well, thanks for spending your early morning with
Heather.
Us here at Squatch-D TV. Angel Nolan in the house as well.
Angel?
And let's see who else. Of course, we got Jeff, Mr. Federal, Mr. 21505 Federal.
Yeah.
Hello, Jeff. And Gary Johnson Jr. is here. Eyes in the Woods.
Sure.
Blake Burrows is in the house. Said, let's get this party started.
Blake.
And we already said Tom Conley. So that catches up our roll call right now. And that's pretty
already.
Already.
Our lurkers. We want to say hello to our lurkers. That's fine. That I do it too. Welcome.
So say it, Chris. Say it.
Well, the chat is hopping. It is. I didn't get lost this time, but it is. It's really moving on.
Yep, there it is. So, anyway, let's do our commercial first.
Oh, okay.
But of course, we're going to do a quick commercial here, just a little promo for what's been going on here on what's going on Friday nights. If you missed the Bigfoot news this week, here's just a sample of what you missed.
Data indicate that the North American Sasquatch is a hybrid species, a rhesuscital male of an unknown hominin species crossing with a female Homo sapiens. She even went so far as to insist that the U.S. government recognizes Sasquatches, as an indigenous people and immediately protect their human and constitutional rights.
Now comes the part where we throw our heads back and laugh. Ready?
Ready!
The Bigfoot News airs Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern right here on Squatch-D TV. And there you have it. So if you didn't catch the Bigfoot News, go back, give it a watch. And it was a lot of fun. And we'll be back again this Friday night with more stories, real stories, and occasionally some zany stories like we finished up with that night.
Yeah.
But
it's a 1 hour show. So it goes by quick.
Yep.
But I think we had a lot of fun, and there was a lot of people showed up, and we appreciate you guys showing up. There was a lot. The first night, and Steve doesn't do advertising campaigns and all that crap. So we had like a bunch of people showed up in the chat, and I was shocked. I was like, golly, this is the first night we're doing it. Thank you guys. I appreciate it, guys and gals. When I say guys, I mean guys and gals.
Yep. And thank you so much, Tennessee Cherokee, who says, everyone, please make sure to tap the like button. It sure does help us.
Yeah. Please. Boom. Promote that algorithm.
I gotta say, I was very happy. It's doing very healthy for a first run episode, and the only advertising we do is on our social media, media.
Yeah.
Some of my Bigfoot groups on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, which you can all find me on. So, and we also posted it for the subscribers on the YouTube channel as well. And our members do, however, get some advance warning of shows upcoming. And boy, we got a humdinger coming next month. But mum's the word right now.
Y'all gonna like this one, I guarantee it.
Yep. But anyway, let's get on to the show tonight. And we of course we have Chris on, and Chris has been on on Into the Fray with Shannon LeGros, and he's been on the Sasquatch Chronicles. He's been on Will Jensing's show. He's been on quite a few different podcasts over the years here.
Top shelf guest here.
So, Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the Bigfoot mystery? And, and I believe I know how you got involved, but I'll give you the floor.
Let everybody over there hear it.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Contreras. I just want to start off right from the get-go, from the beginning. My mom, growing up, worked for PG&E. That's the local California electrical utility company, that serves most of Northern California, Central California. And so we had company cabins up in the Pitt River in Shasta. So I was going there since I was 4 years old. And I remember this place was just very remote. I remember I would just have this weird feeling like there was something off about it right from the beginning when I was young. I mean, as soon as we would get there, me and my brother would be assigned to a room. And I just always, when I look out the window, I just had that strange, odd feeling. I'd pull my bed away from the window. I always remember just pulling it away. Like it just felt like something was looking in. And we're 17 miles away from the nearest paved highway. So we're pretty out there. And anyways, we, growing up, I remember, and I'd be out on the swings in the little playground, and the kids would run off. As soon as they'd run in to get dinner, I'd get the hair up on the back of my neck. And because this swing set was backed right up against a very dark, thick forest. And so I would, as soon as they would all jam in, I would be like, screw this. And I would jam in. Fast forward over to about 15 years old. I had a friend who was 16, and I was real close to him. And me and him were always going on each other's families' vacations. We were like bosom buddies. So I brought him on my vacation with me for a week, and we were doing what the kids did back then. We were, being naughty. We were sneaking out, hanging out with the other girls from the other cabins. We're trying to act cool. We're coming of age. We're playing our Led Zeppelin, the AC/DC, and all that. We're playing the good music out there, Pink Floyd, and I remember we kind of played the music out one night, and we're sitting on the spillway of this dam, which was just down the road about maybe a quarter mile from the cabins, and we heard these screams, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the Klamath, the Snohomish, the Puyallup screams, but that's what we heard, and I didn't know that until years later. But when he first heard it, and it was weird because it was like we triggered it by playing this Pink Floyd album, Umaguma, and it had this one song called "Several Species of Small Furry Animals Gathered Together in a Cave Grooving with the Pick." Really long title for a song, but it just sounded like a lot of animals. It wasn't music; it was just animal noises, and we heard these screams sound off, and I remember looking at my friend Steve, and I'm just like, and he looked at me and he's like, "Did you hear that?" And I remember we turned the radio down. There was about 5 other people on the dam conversating, and me and Steve, we noticed it right away. We turned it down and we're like, "Did you hear?" And then we didn't hear nothing, so we turned the music back up, and it sounded like it was a mile and a half away. It didn't sound like it was a danger to us at that point. But then within maybe about a minute and a half, it had covered half the distance and it was coming our direction. So at that point, the second time, everybody heard it and everybody was looking at each other like, "What's that? What's that?" So we turned the radio down, and then about another 45 seconds later, it sounded off. And at this point, we realized it was coming up the spillway of the dam. And so at that point, it was as loud as a fire engine. It shut down the crickets, everything. We ran. We picked up the radio. We picked up everything we had, and we bolted. We got back to the camp. We couldn't tell our family that we were sneaking out, because we had been grounded. So we had to hold that one in. But I remember people, all of us kids, we were kind of like, one of them said, "What the heck was that? Sasquatch?" I didn't believe in it at that point in my life. I just didn't. So we just blew it off, thought it was a fluke. 3 years later, I go up there, and now we're not with my parents. I'm very familiar with the area. So me and my buddies from high school, we all pile into this area, and we got a campsite down the road from the cabins over at the Forest Service campground down the road, about a mile past the cabins. Anyway, so we ran into some girls on that trip that were like, "Hey, do you want to meet up with us after our parents go to bed over at the hot springs?" So we were like, "Sure," like, "Charge, here we go." Like, we scored. And my buddies happened to been, they were drinking, but I stayed sober that day. I don't, I'd been fishing all day, and then, we ran into the girls. And so I was just like, I was actually trying to like find if I even had some clothes that were, not dirty, I wanted to kind of like score. I just wanted to like see what I could,
and his game on.
Yeah, and so like my buddies, they turned the other girls off because they were and the girls were like, "Your buddies are drunk."
Yeah.
But me and this girl from Klamath Falls, Oregon, we kind of hit it off, and I was young, and so I was like, "Hey, I'm going to get her number, wait up," because they're like, "We're going back to our beer coolers." And I was like, "Well, wait for me. Don't freaking leave me." I said, "I'm going to get her number, and I'll be right there. I'll be right there at the car." About 15 minutes later, I got her number, and then I was, heading back to the car, and they were gone. Those jerks left me. I mean, they left me. And I was hurt. I ran back to the girl and I asked her, "Hey, say, do you got a, flashlight?" And she said she did, but the batteries were dead. And I was like, "Oh, crap," So I said, "Look, I'll catch up with you in a day. I'll try to come back and say goodbye or whatever." And, and I got to walking. I knew I had about a 5.5 mile walk down the road. And all I had was a little Bic lighter with no fluid. I didn't have no gun, no knife. I didn't have nothing. And so I'm sitting there flicking my way down this logging road.
Yeah.
And about a third of the way back to my camp, I heard a very loud, and I'm using the cut in the trees. It's very thick up there. I'm using the cut in the trees. I'm using my little Bic lighter to try and stay centered in the middle of the road. I heard this loud snap. And it was like tree snap, like the thickness of my leg. And I just knew right off the bat, I was like, I didn't do that. I'm on a dirt gravel road. That's not me. So I stopped, and it's pitch black in there. I couldn't see nothing. And I stopped. And I said, okay, maybe that's just, all right, whatever. So I took 3 steps. And as I took the 3 steps, and I was like, like I really was shook up. So I stopped, and it stopped. And I took 3 steps, and I heard, I took another 2 steps, and it was, and I stopped, and it stopped. And I took 1 step, and I was like, oh man, this is not a horse, it's not a cow, it's not a bear. Obviously weighs as much. I know my sound index. When you camp out in the woods and you eat spaghetti and then you have coffee the next morning, you know what's coming next. You got to go to the bathroom. And so I got real familiar to my own sound off trail in the woods. You got to find that little special spot to go do your business. Anyways, this sounded like 5 to 7 times what my sound index sounds like, but it was on 2 feet without a doubt. And I was like, damn, dude. So something told me at that point what it wasn't. And then at the point when I kind of was trying to figure out what it was, in my head, I was scrambling like Scrabble, like a Rubik's Cube for an answer. It came across Bigfoot. And I was like, no, we don't believe in that. We're not going there. It's 11:30 at night. And then it came across Sasquatch. And I was like, oh. At that point, I freaked out. I panicked. I was like, dear Heavenly Father, please quit, please make this go away. I'll quit being an asshole to people. I'll quit smoking cigarettes. I'll try to quit smoking cigarettes. I'll try to go back to church. And that's where I was at that point. And something told me, because the way it was copying me foot for foot, stopping when I stopped, walking when I walked, something told me not to run. I just felt it in my chest. Don't you run or you're dead. And so I just was like telling myself, okay, just keep praying and try to put one foot in front of the other, try to stay calm. And so I continued walking, but it felt like my feet were on fly tape. Honest to God, it felt like my feet were stuck I felt stuck. It felt like each foot weighed 1,000 pounds putting one in front of the other. And, I finally got to where the power lines run through the forest, this PG&E land, and there was a little red barn house underneath. I thought about asking for help, but I'm 17 miles from the nearest paved highway in the middle of nowhere. And I just knew, like, at midnight, this person is going to answer the door with a gun. They're not expecting me. And so I'm sitting there with my fists up in the air in this clearing, and I could kind of just make out the shadow behind the tree. It wouldn't come out into the clearing. It was just kind of just like rocking back and forth, kind of swiveling, looking at me. And I was like, damn it. I could just see like this. I just had this feeling of, I couldn't see and make out any features, but I could hear it break, and, the whole time when it was walking next to me, here's the screwy, scary, terrible thing that was going on as it stalked me foot for foot. And this went on for maybe almost 1/4 of a mile. So you can imagine the terror that I'm dealing with. And literally it felt like, just like I was going to die at any moment. And as this thing stalked me foot for foot, it was also snapping saplings. It was breaking trees. And I've never been more terrified in my life. I've never been so scared and so humbled at that point, because I hadn't been to church in a long time. And here I am praying again. I lost that part of me after my parents' divorce. But here I am, I didn't forget how to pray. And luckily, as I was sitting there with my fists in the air underneath the power lines, all of a sudden I see a pair of headlights coming down the road. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like, this is the prayer. And I'm looking up at the sky like for God. And I'm looking down the road at the, headlights. And I'm looking towards the edge of the forest where this thing's kind of just sitting behind the tree. And I'm looking up at the sky. I'm looking at the headlights, and I'm like, "Go now! Now it's okay. It's okay to run now. Run, okay, run now." And I just bolted. I mean, I practically ran right out of my shoes. I knew I had another quarter of a mile sprint, and I'd be safe because it would open up again into another clearing, and that's where the PG&E cabins were, and that's where there was actually a couple fires. It was weird because the year that we heard the screams back in '89, and now it's 1992. It was both around August 14th, and both years were fire years. Where you could look up at the sun in the evening and it wouldn't burn your retina, and so, I mean, I knew I'd be safe because over in that next clearing was right below the reservoir. That's the same reservoir where we were at the spillway in 1989 at the dam, and heard the screams. So I knew if I made it there, I'd be safe because there was helicopters with drop buckets. They had the fire crews camped in those big green tents, the firefighters. So I knew if I got there, I'd be good. And so I got over to that spot. And I thought about just sitting underneath one of the PG&E cabins, even though we weren't camped there, and just dealing with somebody's attitude the next morning. Just like, "Hey, I'm a PG&E brat. I had a bad night. Just had to borrow your porch for the night."
Yeah.
But somehow I just kept going. I made it back to my camp, and I didn't tell my friends what happened because I still had 5 days of camping with those idiots, and I didn't want them throwing rocks at my tent and but I wasn't going to take that. I wasn't going to take it from them. No way. So I kept that to me, man. I hid it, I hid it, and I just tried to move on. Then, that's 1992. 3 years later, I would end up joining the California Conservation Corps. And, I end up being stationed up at the mouth of the Klamath River in Requa, Klamath, California, basically inside Redwood National Park, borderlining the Yurok Indian Reservation. And it was weird because during the first 2 weeks of boot camp, when we finally passed all our physical training and all the tests that we were going through, we shared the base with the National Park Service and the U.S. Forest Service. And so, while we're on base, we had about a day or two left before we were actually going to be able to walk off the base, because for the first 2 weeks of boot camp training, they kept us like their children. They would not let us leave the base. So we had passed all our tests. We're up there at the cafeteria, and they came out and welcomed us, the other entities. We're in the California Conservation Corps, but now here comes the Forest Service and the National Park Service. Park Service welcomes us, says, "Hey, glad you guys are integrating well with each other. Safety protocol, you guys are going to be able to leave the base in a day or two here. So, we want to warn you, there's elk herds out here. There's a lot of dangers." They said, "Don't go trying to take pictures next to the elk. They can hurt you and they can kill you." And they said, when you're going down to, when you're out here in this area, if you're going down to tie your shoelaces, look around, make sure there's no overhanging rocks, no tree limbs with a mountain lion in it, because once you're crouched down, that's when they'll go for you, And they said, if you run into one of those things, make yourself big, make a lot of noise. And they said, we got a lot of black bears here, but they really don't want anything to do with you. If you give them space, they'll usually go the other way. Unless you corner one of their cubs or they're sick or injured, it shouldn't be a problem. And then they said this: we have one more other thing we wanted to tell you guys. Does anybody here believe in Bigfoot? And I was like, I already knew what happened to me. So I'm looking around. There's like 120 young men and women in this cafeteria that are in the CCCs that are 18 to 24 years old. And I'm looking around to see who has their hands up. There was about 10, maybe 15 hands up, but my hand was down here by my belt buckle. I did not want them to look at me like a kook. I didn't want to, there's a guy who believes, he reads comic books and he believes they're real. I wasn't going to take that from anybody either. And I wasn't interested in Bigfoot back then at that point. I was interested in hot chicks, being able to make enough money to get a new rock and roll tape, and a nice steak dinner. So, I was just looking around to see who else had their hand up. And And I let it go, but then here comes the Forest Service, welcomes them. So they hand the mic over to the Forest Service guy, and my name is Dan Ferreira. And I've tried to reach out to this guy, and it's almost like he's been intimidated. He won't talk about it. I found him on the Facebook, alumni for the CCC, and he won't talk. He won't talk. Something happened to him. But back then in 1995, he told us, I think it was like kind of a moral obligation that he let us know what was going on, because he said he had his own encounter. He said basically he was a road biker in his spare time. And, when the weather was good, he'd get into his Speedos and get on his 10-speed and do the Tour de France thing, and he said one night he was going to go up to Crescent City from the base to visit a friend. And that's a 22-mile run from our base into Crescent City each way. He said he decided, there wasn't any precipitation, expected. So he got on his gear and he went for it. And he said about halfway over to Crescent City, he was up in the summit of the redwoods on the coast, and he had to stop off and relieve himself. Now, he said as he was getting off of his bike, he heard a noise like right there at the forest edge off the highway. And he looked in that direction, and he saw like about an 8-foot tall, he said like he smelled it too, like a stinky monkey looking thing came out on 2 feet towards him. And he said he got back on his 10-speed and pedaled for dear life. He said he didn't hit his brakes until he got to Crescent City. Now, to me, I knew that section of the road already from the van rides from the base to town when we needed to get supplies. And I just thought, that's crazy because it's super windy. It's always wet. If you slide off onto your, on the road on your 10-speed and rack into one of those giant redwoods, you're just going to get vaporized into the tree. You're not going to make it. You're going to be done. And I thought that's crazy, and so, I just I held that to myself. And it wasn't long after being out on the grade, I was ended up being the lead sawyer for my crew. So I was the head guy on the chainsaw. And we were very remote, our particular base, we got contracts with the state that most of the other CCC bases didn't get. We were the ones that were building bridges. We were sent on special projects. We were sent to Lake Tahoe to build bridges. We were the ones putting in these heavy monuments. We were the ones being sent into the backcountry, like into the Marble Mountain Wilderness and back out into the Sequoia, Kings Canyon areas. We were the ones doing the rock work. So when you're out there in the backcountry and you see those nice stairs going, nice rock, steps going up on the trail, that was us. We were the guys that did that stuff. And so it wasn't long before, I was out there on the grade, doing some work out in Prairie Creek Redwoods, that I noticed seeing, like barefooted footprints in the mud. And this is wintertime. And I'm like, who would be out here,
Right.
And I just, wow, and then it wasn't too long after that, it was weird because I was just talking to my friend Tom Seawood up there in Vancouver Island, and I was telling him about some stuff. We were talking about coastal Sasquatch behavior, and basically there was a spot when me and another Corpy, we went from the Klamath Overlook, which is where our base was, to a place called Hidden Beach, and we got bluff charged. I didn't know that's what was happening then. But as I researched years later, I realized that's what was going on. We were in a real weird section of this trail along the coast, and it was like a hallway in there. I mean, it's thick. You can reach out with both hands and touch each side. And it's like being in a big tunnel because the undergrowth under those big ancient trees, there's this thick undergrowth canopy of salmon berries and devil's club and skunk cabbage. It's just real thick. And I remember we were walking, me and this guy, Marcus Washington, and we were coming back from the beach area back to our base. And all of a sudden, these bushes just got shoved right in front of us, on the trail, blocking us from going any further. And I freaked out. And I looked back at him, and he was freaked out. And like we could hear something walking, like and walking around. All of a sudden, these bushes came down and was like blocked us on the trail. And I was like, damn, dude. So I whispered to him, I said, hey, grab the biggest stick you can find. And I grabbed one too. And I don't know how I thought to do this, but it was like a self-preservation mode. I said, I'm going to hit this side of the trail. And when I hit this side of the trail, you're going to hit the opposite side of the trail with your stick. And so we went crunch, 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 you know, and it sounded like giant footsteps. We made ourselves sound like a bigger footsteps.
Right.
And it was so weird when we did that. All of a sudden, those bushes that were in the, you know, in our path, kind of blocking us in, it lifted up like a drawbridge. Like, okay, I give, you know, you guys win. You can walk through now. And we got through, and we didn't say nothing when we got back to the base. But we could hear sea lions from where we were at, and then we watched the bushes. We heard footsteps, not like animal, like real, like human footsteps running down. Now this one didn't sound any more bigger than a regular human being. You know, it didn't sound overly massive, but it was definitely on 2 feet. And we saw the bushes going down, you know, we saw the bushes going down as it was going downhill. And I suppose if you would have kept going downhill for another 200 yards, you'd just go right off the cliff. And the cliffs were like 50 to 20 feet high. And you go down to a small rocky coast area, not much of a beach, but you could hear sea lions in the distance, but you couldn't see the ocean from where we were at because it's so thick in there. And later doing research, I realized that trail is actually a very heavily used migrational trail for the elk that go up and down the coast there. And so I believe that area was a major choke point because you get so narrow in there. All something would have to do is just sit on the side of the trail waiting for that elk or the deer to come walking down the trail, and they just clobber it, you know, and pull it in. Or if they get, you know, hungry for a sea lion, they can walk over to the, you know, to the cliffs, you know, where these things you can, because there's a few spots on that trail where it does open up and you can see down below. And I would see like a sea lion out there basking in the sun, you know, and you could easily, if you were a Sasquatch, take a large boulder and just chuck it off the cliff, snap the thing's spine, and then scamper down and collect your prize. And so, I mean, there's a lot of food out there, a lot of salmon berries, a lot of mushrooms, a lot of, you know, deer, a lot of elk. There's all kinds of stuff. There's tons of bears, mountain lions, you know, raccoons, fox, coyotes, you name it. There's all kinds of stuff out there. And a lot of these trees, these big redwood trees, are hollow. You can fit a family of 5 people, some of these trees, you know, and, you know, take cover for the night. And so, you know, that was something that was really kind of startling as I was there. And then it was a couple months later that I ended up hearing those same screams, the ones I heard in Big Bend, California, out there in Shasta County at my mom's PG&E cabin. Now I'm hearing them here around our base. And I remember I ran in and asked my friend Mike, I was like, hey, Mike, come out here and listen to this, and, you know, and he's like, what? And I said, listen. And we heard that scream, and he goes, oh, that, you know, I don't know what the fuck that is. It's a Sasquatch, Bigfoot, but I don't know. It's freaky. And he said, but you know what? A couple of nights ago, I heard it, and there was 2 of them. They were yelling across the field there, back and forth. And I went back inside. I didn't want to, you know, it was such an eerie sound. I didn't want to hear it no more. So I went back inside, and I went, yeah, I don't like that noise either. And so, you know, I ended up getting injured on the job, you know, a few months after that. And then I came home and had to recuperate. And then I threw in the towel, you know, and then they ended up putting me through vocational rehabilitation and had to go through all that. And I didn't really have anything happen from 1995 until about 2008. Now, right around 2007, though, I realized something. I was taking my young 5-year-old kid out, you know, he was 6 actually. I was taking my 6-year-old kid out to learn to trout fish at my mom's PG&E cabin. And right around this time that this happened, is I totally put Bigfoot to the back farthest part of my brain because I like to fish, I like to hunt, I like to hike, I like to camp. That was a big part of my life. And if I start acknowledging the whole Bigfoot thing, that was going to interfere with my lifestyle. So I put it behind me. I tried to just erase it and put it in a microfilm back in my internal hard drive there. And right around 2007, I'm teaching my kid to trout fish. And all of a sudden, all these shows started coming on TV, like Finding Bigfoot and all that stuff. And I went, oh, man. And it all came back. I just was listening and watching some of these shows, and it all came back. And at that point, I realized, I should probably tell my kid. Like, I didn't want him to not know what happened to me. I kind of needed him to know. I just couldn't imagine him going through what I went through and then having to just block it out because you don't know who to talk to about it. You just suppress it. And so at that point, I just basically was telling my kid, hey, mom and dad
Can I hop in here for a second? Apparently, some folks are having trouble with YouTube tonight. I don't know what's going on. There's, I guess, some people are trying to hit the like button. The like button's not there, and some people are having trouble with chat. My suggestion is there is a YouTube support button somewhere on that screen, usually in the upper right. I think you may have to click on your little icon there, and that can get you to YouTube. See what the problem is, because I have no idea. I mean, we set this show up through StreamYard and we let it go, and usually everything works just fine. But for some reason tonight, there's been a little bit of an issue. So, but anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to jump in with that real quick. And Don, Don, I do have your question. And when Chris is done with his first shout out, we'll get into the questions.
Yeah.
Write down your questions. Write down your questions, people. I'll answer anything the best I can. And so I had to explain to my kid what happened. That mom and dad were Santa Claus, and that's don't worry, And I had to explain to him, there is no Santa Claus, there's no Easter Bunny, but that thing on TV, son, that thing's real. And so anyways, right around 2008, me and my mom went up to go visit my brother in Bend, Oregon. And, we were going to basically visit him, and then after we visited for about a couple of days, we were going to go head west through Crater Lake because I'd never been there. My mom wanted to show it to me, and we were going to head towards the coast. We were going to fish our way west to the coast, and we were going to fish our way down the coast through Oregon and California. When we got to Crater Lake, we had a nice lunch, and then we left, and we were leaving west on Highway 62, and I ended up having to pee real bad. And so I ended up getting, told my mom, pull over, and there was no place to pull over. And we ended up going sideways on this berm, like we were literally sideways on this berm, I mean, she was parked at an angle, and I had to open the door, and it was not easy. And I get out, and I realized it was sharp. There was pine needles and volcanic rock everywhere. And so I had to put my shoes on, and I walked down through this, I heard water in the distance, so I thought, well, maybe there's a place we could fish. So I tried to walk to where I heard the water, and I came to this drop off, about 150 foot, just straight drop off, and there was a glacial fed creek down below. So I just did my business and took my leak. I walked about a city block through the trees, through the forest, till I got to the spot where I could see the water. And I realized me and my mom weren't going to be fishing there, but so I did my business. And as I zipped up and I turned to my left, I looked on the ground, and there was a bare flat-footed footprint right there in the duff. And I went, oh, wow. It wasn't a large one, it was probably 9.5, 10 inches. And, as a father, because now I'm a dad, I'm like, well, what kind of dad would let their kid stand next to a drop off of 150 foot where there's no railing? And nobody would do this, And then I thought, and we're not in the park anymore. We're out in the middle of nowhere. And and then also I said, well, what kind of parent would let their kid walk around barefoot out here, where I almost cut my foot. Yeah. And I thought, this ain't somebody's kid. This is like Bigfoot. And so I ran back to my car, got the little liquor store gas station box camera that I had, that made of paper, and I took a couple pictures, and then I had it blown up, and then I ended up meeting the people. I guess the people from Finding Bigfoot showed up at the Bigfoot Museum out there in Felton and near Santa Cruz, and I heard they were there, so I showed them and got it autographed. I was real proud. My kid got to meet them, and that was cool. And so, anyways, after that, nothing happened for years. I did a lot of interviewing, and I started going on Sasquatch Chronicles, and started going on people's podcasts. But then 4.5 years ago, I ended up moving out to the Kern River Valley, and I didn't go out there for Sasquatch research. I had hurt my body, I'd gotten some injuries, and there were some hot springs out there, and I realized that the hot springs really helped. I was trying to not be on any kind of meds that the doctors had, and so I went out and moved out there. My family was supposed to move out there the next year, but then my kid, decided he didn't want to go because he didn't have any friends out there. So, but I did start interviewing and doing some research out there, and I actually did find and document some really heavy duty stuff. And I started pinpointing a lot of information from stuff that I generated from the locals, and as well as using the BFRO database. And so if you've ever seen like the Dead Sea Scrolls, they find these scrolls out in the Dead Seas, and they'll open them up and they'll be reading, but then there'll be like parts, because they're real old, there'll be like words missing. So they'll have like a scholar come in and find the most likely word that'll fit in where there's a blank, so that they can complete the sentence. So as I'm like looking at the BFRO database and comparing stuff that I'm learning from the locals, I'm actually getting like a full-on migrational pattern. And I'm kind of pissed at Matt Moneymaker, because I told him all this stuff about 4 years ago, and he just came out with a video about 7 months ago explaining everything I told him. I basically showed him how to use his own database, to look for Sasquatch. And so, the way I do it, I got a lot of information, from David Polides and John Freitas. I pay real heavy attention to those guys because they're in law enforcement and they're both investigators. Mm-hmm. So when I would see something, I would log in the date, the time, the elevation, the weather conditions, everything, I would log it all in, especially, if I found a footprint, I'd make sure I put the date, the time, the weather conditions, the elevation. Right. That way they wouldn't get mixed up with other prints, and so, the location, everything. So when you get like a cluster of an area, and you basically are in one area, and then it works like this: if you get your mailbox stolen, and then the next day, 3 days from now, your neighbor's mailbox a couple of houses down gets theirs stolen, and then all of a sudden a week later the neighbor behind you gets something from them stolen, it's safe to say that person is comfortable in operating in that area, and probably lives close by. So as I was looking at,
sorry, we have to do a quick shout out to Ristel. Ristel just became a channel member. Welcome to the gaggle.
Thank you,
Ristel. Welcome board. Thank you much.
So when you get a report and it's in a certain area, and then all of a sudden you see another report that's in that area, it could be a few years later, but if it's in that area and it's the same time of the year, around the same elevation, you start getting data. And then if you look the next month and there isn't any reports in that area where you're kind of starting to see clusterization, then what I'll do is I'll look to the north, to the east, to the west, to the south counties for the next month, and see if that cluster that starts to funnel down that way, to the left, to the right, to the to the north, the east, the west, the south, and I'll keep following it, keep following the trail. Then I'll take these reports from other people and see if that pinpoints as part of the fills in the blanks that aren't there on the BFRO. And so I'll start putting tacks on the map. And I actually had documented where these creatures are, these forest people are up there in the high sequoias in the summertime above, Huntington and Shaver Lake. There's huge clusters, but it's there in the summertime, and we don't have anything in my area, Lake Isabella, until like the fall. And so I realized that, they're up there in the high country in the summertime where it's really hot, because it's nice and cool up there. All those meadows that had snow, that's all thawed now, which all the green grasses are coming, which attracts the deer, which attracts those forest creatures, and I believe that once the fall progresses, they start coming down below 4,000 feet following their prey, because the deer start coming down below 4,000 feet to acclimate for the winter. So, I mean, what are you going to do if your refrigerator sprouts 4 legs? We're lucky ours doesn't go anywhere in the kitchen, but we got to follow our refrigerator, and at the same time, we're acclimating for the winter. So I started documenting where these things are coming from the high country, and they're starting to go out even towards the high desert. And I never, ever thought that these things would ever go out there towards the high desert. But they've been reported out there, Edwards Air Force Base. There's reports out there at places like Victorville and, along the San Gabriels. And so I was like, damn, this is really happening. And so people, if they want to see the footprints that I've been documenting, you can go to Kern County Sasquatch Footprint Research Area by Christopher Contreras 2020. And you'll see what I've found. I mean, I've found a whole family of footprints, 17 inches, 14 inches. They actually set down a baby for 5 footsteps. They were 5 inches. And, the 17 inches, they went 4.5 inches deep into the sandbar. Whereas I'm standing at 220, I'm putting all my weight on 1 foot to see how deep mine will go. And I'm only getting 3/4 of an inch. The 14 inches are going in 3 inches, and the baby went in, the juvenile at 5-inch footprints went in just as deep as my 3/4 of an inch. So I'm like, what are these things made of? Are they made of lead? Are they made of lead?
Yeah.
And
well, Chris, let me jump in here for a second. I just want to pat you on the back and say that is an ingenious method of documentation. And I'll tell you what, bravo. Measuring the tracks, marking what date, the altitude, weather, everything, time of the year. Perfect, man. Perfect. Congratulations. Keep on doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to break your train of thought there, man, but I just had to jump in and say that.
Now, eventually, when you get settled, what you should do is create and this is what I've done is I did the physical mapping for many years. What I did now is I created a Google map right on it where everything is. So now I can just call it up on any device. If I want to call my Big Mac, my big map up on my phone. See, I'm thinking of food. I can call it up on my phone. I can call it up on my tablet. I can call it up on my computer, laptop, whatever I want. That's the cool thing about that. But hey, that's you're all right in line with the right way of going about it.
I'll have you show me that later. But let's get down to the coastal Sasquatch stuff. I was watching my friend Tom and his wife Peggy. They were out on the peninsula of the Olympic Peninsula about a month ago, and they were showing stuff. They were on the beach, and they took a picture of this big bundle of kelp, and I was like, oh, it had a big chunk of octopus tentacle in it. And I said, hey, Tom, I said, that's Sasquatch food. They know when these big tides come in to go out there to the beach. Once the tides go back out, they can find these big kelp bundles. And a lot of times they'll have all kinds of stuff tangled in them. And I had a friend, the first time, because I read this report in Klamath, right where I was in the CCC, And I remember hearing about these motorists, the elderly couple. They're coming back from Portland to the Bay Area, and they stopped off at the place right there by where our base was to take a little rest and a little nap before they got back on the road. And as they were starting to doze off, you know, it was rainy, it was overcast, and they watched a Sasquatch. They caught it out of the corner of their eye. They'd seen this Sasquatch come walking by from the beach with a bundle of kelp under its arms. And if any of you guys have ever even tried to lift kelp, it's heavy. You can't lift much. I mean, hundreds of pounds. And this thing's just casually walking with a huge bundle of bull kelp under its arms right past this car, looks at the motorists like it's pissed that they saw him, blew out a bunch of snot all over the windshield, and walked off across the freeway and into the forest. And I was thinking back then when I first read it, I was like, what is that? You know, I mean, what are they doing with the kelp? Are they just, are they just need a laxative? You know, they're constipated. What are they going to do with it? You know? And so I remember
man, we're smoking it, man.
Yeah. So I was like, I wanted to move up there, and that was going to be how I was going to research it. I was going to drive the highways, and if I saw kelp in the highway on the freeway, I was going to stop and try and see where something walked in the forest and carefully go in there. And but anyways, you know, when I told him that, he called me right away and he's like, I got to know what you know. What do you know? How do you know this? And I said, well, I read a couple of reports and there's a few reports where these things have been seen crossing the highway where I was working with kelp under their arms. And he said, well, here it is. And, you know, I need to know because I have a researcher up on Vancouver Island, and he found a bundle of kelp 1.5 miles up a logging road away from the beach, away from the water. And I said, dude, Sasquatch brought it there. And
yet another member, we Tennessee Cherokee just joined.
Cherokee.
Welcome to the gaggle, Tennessee. Good
Welcome.
to have you, my brother.
So the reason I put 2 and 2 together is I had a friend who was, vacationing down there in Ensenada, down there, staying there for a while. And he was hunting for octopus in the tide pools at night. And he said these big tides came in and there was all this kelp on the reefs, and he was flashing his flashlight down on it. And he said, tangled in the kelp, there was all these lobsters. And he said he was just pulling lobsters out of the kelp, and he filled up his bucket quickly. And he said he filled it up so quickly, he dumped all the lobsters back out and started breaking tails off until he had a bucket full of tails. I was like, you asshole, I wish I was there. But that told me, I put 2 and 2 together. At first I was like, what are the Sasquatch doing with the kelp? Are they just having a salad or what? But then when I heard my friend, talking about what he did over in Ensenada, I was like, oh, light bulb, there's food stuck in that kelp. And when these big tides come in and the kelp forests break loose, they're like a big dragnet. They drag everything in their path all the way up to the beach. And sometimes you'll find fish stuck in there, shrimp, crabs, there's all kinds. It's like a seafood salad. So, I mean, that's when I realized that there's this is the reason why they're doing it. I mean, and I had a skeptic trying to tell me, well, maybe a bear did it. And I was like, no, a bear is not going to take kelp 1.5 miles up a mountain away from the beach. I said, a bear will take a dead sea lion and try to take it to a private location because it doesn't want to share. But when there's kelp on the beach, there's plenty of it. There's no reason to take kelp and be secretive about it. Like, there's no reason to take it, like that. And so anyways, there's that. And then, so I was talking to another guy about we'll go into desert, high desert, Sasquatch behavior. I was watching, when I started documenting these things going out from the high sequoias, and these big meadows down to the high desert, I was like, what would they even do out there? There's not a lot of cover, it's sagebrush. There's not a lot of cover out there. And I was watching these guys, they were riding their ATVs on the dry Mojave riverbed. And I'm like, why would they even go out there? Why? What's out there, and how are they going to get their water? The Mojave Riverbed is pretty much dry. It's, there's basically they say it flows underground. And I thought, my mom, when I was growing up, she took me to see this foreign film called Walkabout, and it was a foreign film about a European couple, a kid and a mom. They broke down their VW in the outback, and they're out there like dying in the sun under this tree, and this Aborigine sees them, and he quickly goes into action. He throws his boomerang and knocks out a kangaroo and takes it to the boy who's all sunburnt, and he rips the thing open and rubs the gut grease all over the kid to soothe his burns. And then he goes over to this dry riverbed, and he sees this green bush in the middle of the riverbed, and he starts digging down, and at about 2 feet he gets to water, and he used like a little reed, like a little tube, and he tells the mom and the son, he goes, drink, he shows them, gives them the little tube, and he saved their lives. So I thought, I bet these Sasquatch know when they're out there in these desert areas to, find a green bush in the middle of the dry riverbed and dig down, because obviously that green bush is still sucking some kind of moisture from some source.
Right.
And also I've heard that these things will, because there's a lot of burrows, like jackasses out there, they're killing those things and eating them. They're eating the wild horses, the wild burros out there. I was like, what would they eat? And that's what they're eating out there in these desert areas. And it's just really trippy and how smart these things are.
Let me ask you this. Are there any supply of desert carrots or desert onions? Because I've been in the New Mexican deserts. And
there's a lot of,
we would find a lot of carrots, and they were the sweetest, juiciest things for being in dry, arid territory. It really surprised me.
Yeah, they have those, and they have these things called yucca plants, and you can take the get down to the base, the root tuber, and it's a real starchy thing, but it's like a potato. When you can roast them on the fire, it's like a potato. And then they have like the Joshua trees. They have these blooms in the certain time of the year. It's usually right around the winter time that they bloom, and they have these white flowers, and I've eaten them right off the Joshua tree, and they're not bad. I fried some up with some garlic. It wasn't bad. And then when they're still in the closed capsule part before they open up as a flower, you can roast those, and they're almost like a bell pepper. And so there's a lot of food out there in the desert. There's a few different types of cactus that grow where you can, eat from. And then they have the little, what they call the tunas, which are the little cactus fruits, And so there's stuff out there. Because I had my experiences up north, in Shasta and up in Klamath, I never put any thought about down south. I wouldn't even look at stuff. And when I first got into this, I was only focused on basically the Pacific Northwest. I would hear stuff down in Florida or Texas and the East Coast, and I was like, Now I realize these things are everywhere. They're everywhere where there's an environment, where there's a certain amount of rain, where there's a certain amount of food sources. They're all over our nation. They're everywhere, all over, the North America, they're everywhere.
And we want to shout out to Dinocrocuta gigantea, another member. Well, welcome aboard. Welcome to the gaggle.
Gigantea. So let's go to some of the questions. Let's answer some questions if there's some people out there.
Well, one of the first questions was asked by our good friend out in Maine, Don Gumow Jr. Is there any evidence of Squatch predation on sea lions?
Yeah, there are. You can see, that the way, like I said, the way I think of it is they utilize everything in their environment that they have on deck. They will eat everything. There's really not a lot of stuff. They will eat the brand new shoots that come out of the pine trees, the new buds. They'll eat those when they're tender. The alder buds that are coming out, they will eat. Sea lions Like I said, when they are in the predation mode, they're very much into the stealth of sneaking up on something, and I think that's why a lot of Native Americans called them ridge walkers. They like to be up above the scent line where other animals can smell them. They want to be above, and they will drop boulders, and I've heard of these people, hunters, finding a stack of acorns on the trail, on a deer trail, and get the hair on the back of their necks, and then they look up and realize there's a big overhanging ledge above them where something could just drop a boulder right on top of a deer or the hunter if he doesn't watch his butt. And there are these things like that whole area in Klamath. They have so much at their disposal. Down in Trinidad, they've been seen by the locals in the middle of winter during a storm, swimming out to the little rocky outcrop islands just offshore. And people were speculating that they were taking birds' eggs, like seagull eggs and cormorant eggs, and stuffing themselves. And even where I lived up there, in the Sequoia, National Forest, there's an area that's an Audubon Society place. And I believe, because I found juvenile tracks out there, that they were actually going there in the spring, because there's over 200 different bird species in that area. And I believe that when you're a mom with a baby in tow, it's a little easier to go get your nutrient-dense food when you're lactating, carrying a baby, just going on an Easter egg hunt rather than trying to run down a deer with a boulder, throwing boulders at something.
Sure. Yeah.
So they are very adaptable to their environment. They will take anything, at their disposal. Sea lions, things that are dead on the beach, they'll eat dead carrion. I believe that when they see a pile of buzzards circling around, up above, when they see them, that they'll make a beeline for that area, knowing that they will eventually find something decaying, like a carcass. And I believe that they will use when they hear a bunch of coyotes howling, because coyotes will signal to each other once they make a kill. They will signal that they've scored. And I believe that, because the Native Americans, they all call these things the boss of the mountain over there in Hoopa and Klamath, that they're just like the boss of the jungle, like the king of the jungle. They'll show up, let something else do the dirty work, like the coyotes, and then say, okay, clear out. Thank you for doing all the hard work, but I'll take over from here. Thank you. Now get out of my way. And then the poor doggies are like, yeah, you fucking suck. And yeah, and so that area. Then all those Native Americans in that area, how you do the translate names of what they called these things, like Creek Devil, Mountain Devil, River Devil, Trickster, Wizard of the Woods, Cannibal Giant of the Woods, all those weird names. They're not good names, but if you're up in that area in Big Bend, California, in Shasta, where I got stock walked down the logging road, I was studying the map there, and as the crow flies, within 7 miles, there's 3 Devils Canyons and 2 Devils Mountains in that 7-mile radius. So, I mean, that kind of tells you what the Native Americans were thinking about that area. I mean, it's like, this is Sasquatchville.
Yeah. So our next question is, what's the most common vocalization in the coastal area you've heard of?
I have heard the Klamath screams. I have not heard the Ohio howls. I have not heard the whistles. I've only heard those, on sound bites on listening to sound bites that are on different Bigfoot websites. And I've heard them on certain videos. I haven't heard the whoops all I've heard was these screams, and I've heard them twice in my life only. I only heard it once in 1989 and once in 1995. And, John Freitas, Sheriff John Freitas out of Sonoma County, who's a researcher, he documented those same screams in Klamath Glen in 1993. So he was there where I was stationed at my work. I didn't know him back then, but he was there already on site, recording and documenting those screams back in 1993. He was there 2 years before I got there to Klamath. And I ended up meeting John Freitas probably around, I became friends with him probably around 2014 or 2015, somewhere around there. But he's a good guy. Solid dude.
John is really one of the first West Coast investigators I reached out to and worked with way back at the end of 2005 when we worked on the infamous Sonoma video, aka the Penn and Teller hoax.
Yeah.
So, and
I mean,
I think he was convinced that it was taken in the Contra Costa area, not necessarily the Sonoma area.
Yeah. What a better person to surround yourself with when you've had something happen, because he specializes in deception detection techniques, and teaches these techniques to our government entities like the Border Patrol, the CIA, the FBI, Homeland Security, as well as other police entities, law enforcement entities. He's like a human lie detector test. So like if you're sitting there, you come in to his office and try to feed him a line of doo-doo, he's going to look at you by the way your body language is. But if you're doing something weird, he's going to say, hey, you know what? Get out of my office. Don't let the door hit you in the butt. Or if he realizes, hey, you're going through like, this, and he sees the truth, like he's going to say, hey, don't, come on in, kid. Just take it easy, relax, have a seat, take it easy. It's all good.
Well, the area sounds great. I mean, it sounds like a perfect area. I mean, if somebody took you and put you out in the woods and say, okay, this is where you're going to survive at, I think that you'd do great because you've got the coastal region, which the coastline, the beach is food for days. Okay. And if you can't find anything on the coast, you just step into the woods. And if you've got a long enough gut, you can eat the pine shoots and bark and the other things you can find. What a super area, man!
I've had a theory: if you go out there and you starve, you're an idiot. There's too much food out there.
And that theory that the Sasquatch have a longer gut than than humans would allow them to digest more vegetation than we could. So they may be perfectly fine having a big bowl of kelp for supper.
I thought that there was something really strange, because as I was looking into the NAB site, with David Polides, I noticed that he talked about a book called Reminiscence of a Yurok Woman, to the Native American, Reminiscence of a Yurok Woman, authored by Lucy Thompson in 1915. And I was like really interested to read that because it was the area where I was stationed in the CCCs. And so I started reading it on PDF. It was government PDF. It was already, since it was 1915, the copyright limitations had ran out, and I was actually able to read the book in its entirety.
Oh no, Chris, where'd you go, man? Uh-oh. We lost Chris.
No big problem.
He'll be back. Surely. Once he realized he got cut off, he'll be back.
Yeah, that just went like boop.
Dang it, man! And I'm sorry. I've been ignoring chat. I'm sorry. Normally, I'll keep up with you guys, but I have been so fascinated with everything Chris has been saying. It's just been awesome. But while we're waiting for him to get back, I'm gonna take a ski.
I hope his phone didn't break or phone didn't die. I'll get on Facebook. I'll message him real quick.
Well, does he have a cat? Remember
no, I don't know.
Oh, Sorry, guys. I'm pouring my ski in my glass. I know it's kind of noisy. I remember when was it the noodle incident with Henry? Henry spilled his ramen noodles. He's doing a show, and then I'm talking, and all of a sudden, and everybody's going, "What happened to Henry? Oh my God! It sounds like he's been murdered." He spilled his ramen noodles on him while he was doing the show. Oh God! Those were the days. Love you, Henry.
That would really stink if we lost him for the last 40.
No, please. What a great guest. Oh my God. And the area where he's researching, man, it just, prime gold, Yep. Plus his research methods. I mean, come on, man. You got to applaud that. I know you're doing the same. But still, he's come up with recording the footprints, recording the altitude, the date, time of year, and then putting that stuff in the book for comparison later. And he can determine, well, if there is such a thing as migration patterns, which is probably just them following the food, if we're logically, he can determine, okay, well, in this time of the year, they're likely going to be in this area, and he can concentrate his search on that area of the map. Brilliant. Oh, yeah, you guys, the chat, I have been ignoring you guys. I'm so sorry.
He hasn't seen my Facebook message either.
Oh, I think we got him.
Somehow it kicked off. Yeah.
You're back in the end.
You know what's crazy? That happened right when I was about to tell a key point. That book that I was telling you about, Diary, Reminiscence of a Yurok Woman.
Right.
I believe, because when I first read it, it was online. It's still free online PDF. And there's two chapters called The Indian Devils. You were able to read those, but it seems like the government caught on. And now if you go on PDF to that, you cannot read those. It skips from page 97 all the way to 105. And that's where it starts again. They literally took it out. You can buy it on Amazon. You can find it on Amazon, but you're not going to be able to read about those Indian devils for free on PDF. It's almost like the government took it out. And I believe that I know there's an active cover up on this subject. My sister works for NSA. I asked her about Sasquatch. She said, she's limited on what she can say about it. She worked the same job Edward Snowden worked. And, now she's working in Homeland Security, who are not doing their job. Sorry, sis, but, I'm happy about our National Guard down there in Texas. Sorry, sis, but anyways, I don't think it's her fault. I think it's some other agenda. But anyways, that whole thing, that conspiracy, there's obviously a major conspiracy, and I know what it is. It has to do with the local economy and those little towns like where I was living up there in the Southern Sierras. We absolutely depend on, the big cities like the San Francisco Bay Area, Los Angeles area, San Diego, Sacramento areas. We need that huge tourist push. People buy the beer, the ice, the fishing gear, the fishing licenses, campground fees, rafting guide services. There's ski resort in the wintertime. If people are scared to go up there, our little communities, even down to the people that, you need a new tire because your tire blew out, or a tow truck, all those little mom and pop businesses won't make it through the winter without that tourist push every, season. And so it's kind of like, you remember the movie Jaws, the very first movie Jaws?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Remember when the guy the game warden was saying, hey, to the governor, hey, we got to get these people off the beach. There's a shark out there killing people. Mm-hmm. And then the greedy governor goes, no, it's 4th of July weekend. This is when we make all our revenue, and the beaches will stay open, and at the expense of human lives. And, there's that factor. There's the public safety factor, after the Patterson-Gimlin film. Overnight, we had big game hunters from all around the world coming in with the big guns and the dogs and the moonshine mentality, as they like to say over there on the Sasquatch Chronicles. And, local magistrate, if there's any, maybe one or two of these little mountain communities sitting there biting their nails, hoping that nobody gets shot or kills or shoots themselves in the foot, as they're taking pot shots at every shadow in the woods. And then there's the other factor that there's a little bit, seems to have a little bit to do with the timber and the mining. They don't want a bunch of hippies locking arms saying you can't come in here because we got to save the monkey man habitat. When we need our industry, we need our loggers out there, and we need our miners to go out and do what they do. And a lot of people lose jobs if there's a bunch of people saying we can't do this and we can't do that. And any other questions out there?
Yep. First, we have one question and one comment, both from Don. Don says, "Your sister turned your phone off."
Probably.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I had to put that up. That killed me.
And what is the most common color reported in your area?
There's two. There's black and there's red. And from what I heard, the black are the most common. And I heard this one guy, and I don't know how much credence I want to put into it, but the guy was saying the blacks are the most common, and they absolutely hate us. They don't like us. They don't want nothing to do with us. They can be very ornery and even dangerous, where he was trying to say that the red ones are more of a astral spiritual being. I don't want to put a lot of credence into that because I haven't noticed that or seen that. I was just listening to somebody's podcast that was not far from where I lived, and he was talking about some of the desert phenomenon, because he's from out there in the desert near Victorville. And I'm not sure what all this stuff is. I remember I was in the very beginning when I was starting to get into the Bigfoot thing. I made friends with a lot of different people, and then I have suddenly I started to cancel out a few of the people when I realized they're a little off. Like, I saw you guys put the picture of Matthew Johnson there, and I was friends with him on Facebook, but then he started doing some weird stuff, and I was like, and he really wanted me to go to Bremerton, Washington, to his book signing, and he wanted me to say something that I wasn't going to say. I told him what I experienced, and I don't talk about it much, but I will say it now since we're on here. While I was up there in Klamath, I was stationed in CCC. I had friends that were off base that I met in town that were locals. I got invited to go watch movies one night at my friend's house in the trailer park down the road, about a couple miles from where I was staying. And there's a spot where I was from one friend's house. I had a friend named Mike. I used to call him Uncle Jesse. He looked like the guy from Dukes of Hazzard. He lived in one trailer park, and then there was a friend, Tony and Lynette, who lived at the other trailer park, and they're about a mile and a half apart. And there's this one section that's close to about a half a mile where you come down off the bluff, and you're in a lower part you're in the coastal marsh area. They build the trailer parks up on the bluffs because there's a lot of flooding there. We get a lot of rain. And so I'm on this one section of the highway coming back from watching movies one night, going back to my friend Mike's. And over in this low coastal marsh area, there's swamp on both sides, coastal marsh swamp. And there's blade grass hedges in it. And they build the highway up like 6 feet of gravel on that section because it floods, so they have to build the highway up on gravel. And so I'm walking north on 101 one night, and it's probably like full moon. I don't have any problem seeing where I'm going. And I hear this noise off to my right, and I look over my right shoulder, and I'm tripping out because I'm hearing like some crazy noises. It sounds like trees being broken. And I look over, and probably about maybe 70 yards off to my right, through the swamp, at the edge of the swamp, I see these two alder trees, saplings, about 30 footers, rocking back and forth real violently, like a railroad sign that just went up. And I'm staring at it like, what is this, you know? And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. At first, I thought it was an elk raking its rack, you know, on the tree, because they'll do that. But as I looked at it, I saw strange, looked like vapor, like you would see on a hot road, like a mirage, you know, like that vapor. And I'm looking, and then it kind of went to like pixelation, like this weird pixelation, like you see on the movie Predator. And I'm looking, and then all of a sudden I see like this thing it's making a beeline straight for me, and it's hauling ass, you know, and literally the blade grass is parting like 2 or 3 feet apart, and it's just coming straight for me. And I'm like, the hell with that. And I took off running. And back then, you know, 1995, I used to wear one of those biker wallets, you know, they have the chain with the keys. I took out my wallet and I started swinging my keys. I didn't have anything else on me. I'm like, if anything touches me, I'm going to smack it upside the head with my keychain. And, you know, and I'm just like, you know, I'm not having it. And I actually started praying. This is the second time I've had to pray while I was walking on a lonely road, you know, and this is, you know, because this is Highway 101. It's only one lane on each side. It's like a country road up there, up north. Whereas down here, you know, it's 4 lanes, you know, where I'm at in the Bay Area. But so I'm walking, and I'm looking, and I'm seeing this thing beelining for me. I take off running, and I'm kind of looking over my shoulder to see how it's progressing towards me, and I try to speed up because I'm trying to outdo it. And I notice this thing diagonal that changed directions as if to diagonal and get ahead of me, cut me off, beat me to the chase. And I'm like, hell no, you know, and I'm running. And luckily, as I'm praying, this time now a logging truck comes off the grade and lights up the whole highway, a Simpson logging truck. And I'm like, oh, thank God, because if something happens to me, if I get yanked off the side of the highway by something, this dude's going to see it. You know, at least he'll see, you know, something happen. And literally, as I anticipated this thing hitting the side of the highway next to me, I looked down on my family's graves. I saw human footprints running in the dry grass right next to me, keeping pace with me. And then when those lights hit the back of me, you know, the truck hit my back, it turned back into like leaf blower mode. Like it just blew right ahead of me, like wind, just like
so
see what I could do.
Yeah. Now I noticed not once have you used the word Bigfoot or Sasquatch for that.
I won't say it.
Yeah.
I won't say it because I didn't see it go from one to the other to the other.
So,
but that guy Matthew Johnson wanted me to say that it was Sasquatch, and I said no. I will tell that part of the story, but I'm not going to alter anything from how I tell it the way I saw it. I see it the way I've seen it, and that's what I'm going to stick to because I'm not going to change anything to fit your narrative. Sorry, and he got pissed.
and in thinking of that, you said very clearly you saw human footprints, not like Sasquatch trends. So perhaps something paranormal occurred there.
It was definitely paranormal, and I told my friend who's Native American from that area what I saw the next day, and he said you saw a technology, and I was like, what is that? He said it's a shapeshifter, and I said, what is that? And he said, we don't talk about it, especially at night. And I went, oh, okay. I guess I don't get to know.
Yeah. But credit to you for not calling it a Sasquatch, because I think so many people would call it a Sasquatch regardless.
No, you know, if I don't see it go from one to the, thank God I didn't, because I don't want to be in that category of the woo woo. I don't, you know, I mean, because it makes it even harder on a person, you know. I mean, I'm not going to say that other people haven't seen that happen because I've heard of other people say it. I just personally haven't, you know. I'll just tell you what I saw, and that's it, you know.
Right. Very interesting stuff, but that's real cool. We have what other questions do we have? I had a question, but I kind of lost it in listening to this story. Chris, you got any questions?
Man, I'm sorry. I've been so enamored listening to Chris tell us. But I will say, if I see a predator-looking pixelation thing in the woods of Kentucky, I'm out.
I don't want to mess with it.
I don't want to mess with it either, man. No way. But,
we're not going to win. I don't think we'll win.
Yeah, during any of these experiences, Chris, I mean, some people report they had smelled an odor during their encounter, and some didn't. It's kind of like 50-50. But did you at any time smell any sort of odor or anything?
Never.
Now, I gotta say, I find your latest non-Bigfoot but interesting encounter very similar to what Jay Pachochin had described.
Yeah.
Back on, and Chris, if you get a chance, I'd say watch the show we had entitled "What Did They See?"
Send that one to me if you can. I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
Because they had a very similar type of encounter in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And so very, very fascinating because Jay himself described it as the predator.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what bugs me about this research thing? One thing I can say that really just bugs the hell out of me is like those footprints, like the ones I say, if you go to Kern County Sasquatch Research Footprint Research Area by Christopher Contreras 2020, I went from one end to the other, and it's so weird how some of these footprints will just start out of nowhere, and then sometimes they'll just end in nowhere. Now, I did find where one, and I was frustrated because it ended. I followed it right up to the water to where where these tracks went to the water, and it's not in those videos. But I walked right to where footprints went right up to the creek.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I didn't see where they walked through the creek because it was up. They're going in 4.5 inches. And I lost some footage because I did have my Facebook account hacked. From some knuckleheads from like Nigeria or wherever the heck it was. They were trying to extort me $600 Apple gift card to get my stuff back. And luckily I had sent those videos to Stephen Cawthorn, and he had it on a thumb drive. That's the only reason I was able to get them back. So I was happy because I wasn't going to put it on YouTube. That was my private secret. I didn't want anybody knowing my area. Because I wasn't done really thoroughly research, and I put together a research crew in that area where I just moved back from that are taking over, and they're going to be keeping an eye, and I trust them, because they're credible people. But yeah, I mean, I watched these tracks go right up to the creek, and then I looked to see if they just walked right through, and then I had to like boulder hop to get to the other side of the creek. And then they just started up, I saw where they started continuing again. It's almost as if this thing had hopped, like jumped. And where it landed, it was like it landed like 30 to 35 feet from where it stopped. So that kind of tells you how the way these things, the power of these things, how far they can jump.
Yeah.
And man, I mean, God, if we could put them in the Olympics with, or even just a job that would require some kind of stuff like that, I mean, wow.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, a lot of people, they describe these superhuman abilities, and for a human, yeah, that may be impossible for us, but for a Sasquatch, okay, well, I don't think they're humans, and they certainly don't look like humans to me, and obviously they're going to be stronger, faster, like the $6 billion man. But them jumping a great distance in one leap would be perfectly acceptable. Something we couldn't do, but maybe totally normal for them.
No, one of the things that I fought tooth and nail on that was just really just I would never go there is when people were trying to say that there was an alien connection. But I'm kind of trying to be open-minded about it now from doing a lot of research on reports. One thing that I noticed when I got there to Sequoia National Forest, when I moved up there to Lake Isabella, we were taking different roads, and one day I took this one road out to the South Fork, where the South Fork of the Kern feeds into Lake Isabella, and I found these barefooted footprints in the mud along the dirt road that kind of cuts through to the other side of the lake and goes through a heavy sycamore swamp thicket. And as I followed these tracks, and they weren't big, they were about 10 inches, but they were flat footed and they kind of had claw toe points. And I know bear anatomy. I mean, I lived on the reservation. I've skinned,
looks like.
yeah, I've skinned 2 bears. So, I mean, there's the bear tooth necklace. I mean, I know bear anatomy. I know their feet. And this wasn't a bear's foot. These were flat, human-like, flat-footed footprints, but they kind of had claw toe points on the ends, like they needed to trim their nails or something. But I followed to where these things went out into a field, and this field of green grass that was almost up to past my knees. There was 2 circular burnt spots about the size of a regular person's, bigger, about twice the size of a person's living room. And I thought, maybe this is where somebody had a burn pile, like the Forest Service did a burn pile, but there was no charcoal wood. And on the ground, I noticed there was like this burnt corrosion, like you would find on your battery terminal, but it was orangish instead of like the yellow corrosion you see on your battery terminals under the hood. It was like orangish, like something had burnt, mineralized the crust of the ground. And I thought, what in the hell is this? And so I just kind of scratched my head. What is that? And I remember reading, some reports, like I listen to Bigfoot case files sometimes when I'm going to sleep or whatever. And I remember they were talking about there was a Hopi Indian legend where they called these things silly bear because they said they saw a star descend from the sky and hover into their area, and out came 3 silly bear, and they called them silly bear because they walked upright like men, but they were covered in hair like a bear. And sometimes they would come by their camp and beg for food, and eat with them. And then I remember the Nabs site, from David Paulides. I was reading like a shoebox letter, and I was interested in this thing because I wanted to say maybe it might have been Roger Patterson or someone like that. And it was dated, like supposedly the daughter had found this shoebox up in the, attic or something like that. Had found it in the house when she was cleaning her grandpa's house or whatever. And it was dated 1962, and it talked about, and I don't know if it was Roger Patterson, but it was somebody from that era during the, when they were finding all the tracks. 1962, it talked about seeing a silver disc come hover into the Hoopa Valley, and through one of the portholes, they saw a hairy humanoid manning the craft. And I went, I'll be damned, because what was it? That's 1962, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71. Like 9 years later, 8 or 9 years later, all of a sudden, George Lucas comes out with Star Wars, and guess who's the co-pilot to the Millennium Falcon? It's like,
I also have to wonder, what levels of authenticity has been applied to that letter. Could that just be a jib? Okay, I'll just turn this letter and say it came from a shoebox. There's a lot of I always look at things like that with an air of suspicion or air of caution, because there's no provenance attributed to this letter, no chain of custody, no anything. So
Yeah, totally. And I always wonder about Hollywood. It's like sometimes it seems like they know stuff and they'll let out a little bit of a fart, like they're preparing people who are smart enough to decipher the message they want to put out,
Now let me ask you a question about portals. And just when was the first Bigfoot portal story that ever came out? Does anybody remember? But it wasn't in the 90s. I'll tell you that much.
The first time I heard about it was at the soya place that what's his name, Matthew Johnson was talking about. That's the first time I heard about it.
That story, I think, started coming out in the late 90s, early 2000s, and started to grow. But here's something very interesting. In I believe 81, was it, or 82? Maybe 83. There was a movie called The Terminator that showed something jumping out of a portal.
Oh, man.
Right. So again, I think, what is this? Is this Hollywood imitating us or us imitating Hollywood?
I didn't even think about the Terminator thing, but when I think of portals, I always have to wonder why I will follow some of these Sasquatch tracks for a ways and then they just stop. And I've heard of them like over in like places like Indiana where a guy follows them out into his cornfield, that had already been knocked down. The cornfield's already been harvested. And then he's out in the snow. He just goes out to the middle of the field and it just stops. Like, where did it go?
Okay, so if it's in the snow, I also cut another video on this channel about snow tracks being very, very suspect because you have snow melt and sun hitting them. So something, say a bird, a large bird like a falcon, eagle, an owl, pops down, does some hops, right, and then takes off. And then you have a day of sunlight on those tracks. They kind of melt in a little bit, make it looks bigger. And what you're actually looking at it's just bird hopping.
Yeah.
And that's why they can have nice big strides, because they're boom, boom. That's just one possible explanation. Now, as far as on the ground, when you're finding these tracks, yes, I would be very worried about finding tracks in a soft field and all of a sudden they disappear. But if you're finding them in forests where the terrain might be different, or it might have zigged a different way into harder terrain, that can explain why those tracks disappear. I've had tracks disappear too, but it wasn't because of they just disappeared. It was because of the hardness of the substrate.
Yeah. I've had that same thing happen, Steve. I've had a good trackway disappear on me through the woods, but it's not because they're magic. I think it's because I was too stupid to find them. I lost the trackway, and a couple of years later, I'm sitting here thinking about it. Well, how the hell could they give me the slip? How could they have given me the slip? Well, obviously there were trees everywhere. They could have hopped up a tree,
could have went up,
hopped over to the next one, and popped down, 15 feet away. And, I couldn't find it. So, they lost it.
Yeah. That's what I thought happened in Hoopa when the people called the cops over there on the reservation, and they followed the thing out into the woods. And I don't remember them saying, look, they looked up. They just said they heard it walk off and they went and followed it, and they all of a sudden it's gone. And I thought, well, did you guys think to look up?
Well, that's possible.
Sitting there looking right down.
These things can blend very well too, just like the deer crossing the road. The deer crosses the road, you look over and it's gone.
Yeah.
And I also want to welcome back into the show Brian Barber and Cryptic Crystal. Good to see you guys coming on a little bit late, better late than ever.
Good to see you.
And of course, don't worry, you can always catch the rest of this show on replay.
That's right.
So Chris and I, Chris and I have been talking a lot for the last year or so, and we got kind of connected because of a couple of videos I put on the site. And I just wanted to, if it's okay with you, I wanted to get your opinion. And I don't know if you ever saw this particular screen cap of the actual finding of what we did. And here it comes, was that. And I remember when that photo first came out, you had actually contacted me saying, "Hey, I got to talk to you about this." And this just shows the honesty of this guy and genuineness of this guy. Not going for. He was like, "Listen, this is baloney," and he gave me 1,000 reasons why. Yeah, and you were with him supposedly when this happened. Were you not? And,
yeah.
And he's like, nothing like this ever happened. And did he actually leave his phone on top of the Jeep?
Well, here it is in a nutshell. When we went out, I invited him to come up, and because it was getting close to that time of the year when the stuff was happening. I'd already been documenting it for almost 3 years. And I said, come up, check this stuff out, dude. You're going to be blown away. And then when we get out there, one day we decided, because he's into like gold prospecting, and I was kind of just starting to learn about that stuff. So I said, let's go up the river. Let's go up river past Kernville, and let's go check out, this certain area I want to show you. And we could go look for gold deposits, and we'll go look for tracks at the same time. We'll look for black sand, and we'll go look for tracks. We'll multitask. We'll kill two birds with one stone. And the thing is, when I go out researching, I like to stick together with whoever I'm researching with. I don't like going separate ways. I'm always about the buddy system for two reasons. One, for safety, but two, if we see something, we're both witness to it at the same time. We're there to vouch for each other. And every time I would go out with, Steve, he would want to go his own direction. I'm like, yeah, fool, the jerk, this guy's, don't you know what? There's no I in team. Let's do this together. Right. And so he take off one direction, and I'm just like, fine, I'll do my part to look and see if I can find anything. And then I found black sand. Collected some for the bucket, to run through the sluice later on. But then when we met up, because it was starting to get dark, we get back to the truck. And he's got his girlfriend there, and then he flips his phone open, and he goes, and his hand's shaking. He's like, "Look at this," and I'm like, "What do you?" And I'm like, "No, no." First of all, I know from my experience, when I had my being followed down the road,
and
that messed my head up.
So let me just stop you a second. Let me just stop you 1 second. So the photo on the left is the photo you saw when he opened his phone.
Yeah. And the thing is we don't have ferns. Look at it. Yeah. There's ferns in there. We don't have ferns in our canyons. There's none.
And I remember him showing this to me, and you can't see it in this photo because I got my blockhead in there. But there is a line on that photo in the lower right-hand corner that I automatically recognized as a video progress bar. So I was like, are you sure this isn't from a video? And then he was like, I dare you to find this on, and guess what? The man above you, below me, found it. And it was on a Shock Docs documentary that we got on YouTube. And that's actually the screen cap of that. Same creature, same thing. It may be slightly a frame off.
Yeah, it may be a quarter of a second later, or I don't know, before maybe, but that's close as we could get it for stop, pause, and start.
And if you notice, the story that he had told me was different than how it occurred. He said that he had left his phone on top of the Jeep. He went about so many miles and realized that he stopped and it slid off and it smashed the phone.
Yeah.
And so that's all crap, I suppose.
He didn't tell me that.
Steve. Cryptic Crystal, super sticker, $3. Thank you, Crystal. Appreciate
Thank you, Crystal.
He did not tell me that either. And when I saw him, and here's the thing, when he started touting that around, when I first saw him, I just went, nope. and I got pissed. I wanted to go home and just call it a night because here's the thing: if you're going to get a photograph that's that clear, and you're within yelling distance to me, as soon as you're safely away from that thing, you're going to be like, Chris, I need you. I had the 45 on me.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're not going to want to be by yourself anymore. You're going to have so many emotions. You're going to be freaked out. You're going to be excited. You're going to be nervous. You're going to be sweating. You're going to be going through like a whole whole collage of emotions. Like you're going to be going through a lot of shit all at once, man. Your heart rate's gonna be racing. You're gonna be going through it.
Yeah. Well, so he basically told you he saw it,
and he was calm.
Now for the story he gave to me, it was I was just taking pictures throughout the day, and I left the phone on top of the truck, and then it smashed, and I started looking at it, and I'm like, oh my god, I caught a picture of it.
Well, and
it made no sense.
That exposes that he had some sort of devious agenda there. He had that picture on his phone before he went out with Chris. And tries to use Chris as a witness. Oh yeah,
now he's trying to blame it on the late Jan Allen. Yeah, saying, I sent it. He sent that picture to me, and somehow it got into my gallery. But what you say completely contradicts that whole story. He says, I saw it. I got a picture of it. Here it is.
That narrative is just like the Titanic, maybe. It's gone. It's gone down at the bottom.
I had to unfriend him. It sucks because genuinely he has some good nature about him, but I can't tolerate anybody who's going to deviate and try to do something like that. I have a good reputation, and I don't need somebody, just because they want to get ratings for their freaking show and they're too lazy. I mean, dude, you can still have good ratings on your show and not have, I made a vow to people that I associate with that, hey, if I see something and it's credible, it's not no blob squatch where it looks like it could be like a blurred out video of a burnt out stump on a mountainside, as the sun's going down, and then they're going to put the little red circle around it and say, this is the Sasquatch. I'm like, that will never be me. I made a vow. I will never put that kind of crap out. But I said, if I see something that's solid and it's real, I will bring it to the attention of everybody, God and everybody. But if I don't see nothing for 1 year, 5 years, or even 15 years, I'm not going to try and do it. Put nothing out there that's not there, but I'll still research other people's claims, research other people's videos, research other people's, data. But as far as me putting something out there, if I don't see, if it's not real, if it's not solid, I'm not even going to put it out there. I mean, if it's not solid.
Yeah, and there are definitely a lot of channels out there that are putting out borderline hoaxy stuff, and stories, just plain stories, reading them from emails. And
got an email the other day.
We got an email the other day. Yeah. And they're doing it just to get views and clicks and likes. And you know what? I've always said this isn't the biggest audience in the world, but it is the best audience that we have.
Is. Definitely.
Number two is I'm not in it for the sprint. I'm in it for a marathon. And day by day, month by month, year by year, this channel grows, but we're growing with people that are, number one, that are being educated. Number two, that are educated. And number three, that have open minds and can see this from an unbiased point of view, saying we take this on a case-by-case basis and we evaluate it. No matter what we believe, whether we believe Sasquatch exist or not, we take each case and we leave the bias at the door.
That's it.
And
there are some things, though, the Bigfoot and UFO connection, I do have a little bias there. But it's because I have not experienced that myself. And when I have a bias, it means I'm listening and looking for people that may have experienced something or described something similar to what I've experienced personally. And that helps me with my research. But now, I'm all about keeping an open mind. Sure, no problem. But some things I got to see to believe.
And that's very right, Crystal. People assume birds of a feather flock together. Got to watch the company you keep. Very true.
That's it. I mean, that's when I first met Tom, Scardy, and told him about what I had going on. He was going to fly me out to Paris, Texas. And, back then I was injured and, I was like, he still had his reputation. It was solid. This was back in, I forget when, but, yeah, I know this was actually after. And then I remember John Freitas said, no, don't do it. You'll throw your shit in the trash. And, okay. But I was actually injured anyways. So it was probably not going to be good for me to be going out to Texas. I don't want to leave my family either, and just be like, okay, family, I'm raising my kid. And now it's like, I'll see you later, family. It wasn't right. And, he reached out to me last year and wanted to fly me out to Thailand to be looking for the orang pendek. And, and I thought, I kind of would like to go to Thailand, all expenses paid. And, but, that stuff didn't happen, now, now my friend Tom, he's thinking about flying me out all expenses paid to be in a conference out in Vancouver Island, talking about the coastal Sasquatch behavior. Now that's something I am interested in. And we'll see if I can get, somebody to take care of things. I got animals, I got my dad, and if I can get somebody to hold the wheel, and maybe I will go out to do that one. But yeah.
I'm going to send you some links. I'm going to send you the links to 50 large because you wanted to know more of that. The 50 large special we did a special edition 50 large. I'll send you the link to that. I'll send you the link to the Jay Pachochin video that I talked to you earlier, and I'll also send you a link to there's another show I'll send you a link to the Cawthorne videos I did. I don't know if you've seen them yet, but
I think so. Yeah, it just I'm so upset with him. Just so upset because
tough bump for me too, because he was another guy that befriended me, dropped Biscardi, said, he's a hoaxer. I want to apologize. I want to be, I want to be your friend, and had me on his show a couple of times. And then all of a sudden, the beginning of last year, about a year ago now, I think it was February, he dropped me on this. He dropped it. And speak of the devil, there's Jay Pachochin.
You can see, man.
So, and I was going to say this, anybody out there who does research, be very careful what you say to people like Matt Moneymaker. He'll blow you off like your stuff isn't important, and then he'll turn around and use your information a year, 2-3 years later and act like he's the one that did the research. He's got a guy that they do these mountain monster mysteries named Eli Watson. Don't mess with that guy either, because I had sent him a message and some information saying, I put together a research crew in Sequoia National Forest that's, covering this Southern Sierra Sasquatch phenomenon, and the high desert stuff. And I said, I don't mind if you use my videos, that have my trackway that I explained to you guys. If you go to the Kern County Sasquatch Footprint Research Area by Christopher Contreras, I sent those videos. I said, you can have permission to use these videos in your content, but you have to give it up that I'm the one that found it and give a little recognition to my crew. And he didn't accept the friends request, but I could see he was pulling and trying to yank. And so when I said, you know what, screw this, I started deleting all my videos because I didn't want him to go and make a new video out there and actually show where I didn't want him to take all the stuff, all the days and months, year of studying maps and studying reports, and then try to act like that was their data. Because one thing that I have figured out, and this is for the audience that understands California geographics, basically Kern County is one of the most important Sasquatch research areas in the state of California, even though there's only 12 reports on the BFRO database, it is the only place in California besides Shasta County where these creatures can actually transition from the eastern Sierras into the western Pacific mountain ranges without being detected. Because if you look at the southern Sierras, from Google Earth, it starts to fan out westward like a scorpion tail. It gets skinnier and skinnier. It goes out through Tehachapi and into Fraser Park and into the Angeles National Forest. It also connects with the San Gabriels, and this is part of their migration area. This is a very important part of their migration area, and the only other place where they can do this without being seen is in Shasta County, from the area of North Shasta Lake all the way to the town of Weed. That becomes one tight canyon of two mountain ranges that meet each other, only separated by Highway 5. So all they have to do is cross Highway 5, and they can go from the eastern Sierra mountain ranges into the western Pacific mountain ranges and vice versa, and same with down south, because the rest of California is separated by the San Joaquin Valley, which there is no cover out there. So they're not going to be able to achieve moving from west to east or east to west without being detected. It puts them at a great disadvantage.
Right. Well, guess what time it is, Chris?
Man,
it's been a good session with you guys, and like I said, it's been an honor and a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me.
Well, as always, the pleasure's ours. Chris, do your thing. You know what to do. Again,
I want to thank Mr. Chris Contreras for being here with us. I have been so riveted to listening to you speak, man. Thank you. Great guest. It was an honor having you on tonight. And thanks again, everybody over in the chat, all our listeners, all our lurkers. We appreciate you guys. We've got the greatest audience on YouTube. Well, anywhere. I appreciate you. We love you. If it's your first time watching the channel, I always got to say, man, like, subscribe, leave a comment. It helps the video. It helps us get noticed, and we sure appreciate it. Steve?
So anyway, folks, we appreciate everybody. I want to thank all our new members tonight.
Yes.
Thank you. I want to thank Crystal for the super sticker. We will be back here Friday night for the Bigfoot news. I got to remember to change that in my head now. That's new. It's now Friday night. We'll be back at 9 p.m. Eastern for the Bigfoot news. I want to thank Chris for coming on tonight. It's definitely been a pleasure. And it's always nice to have a show where we don't have to talk very much, which is a good thing, because that means the guest has a lot to say, and we like that.
Great.
We like that. So anyway, I want to wish everybody, again, thanks to the audience. You guys are the best. Be on the lookout this week. I plan on doing at least a couple of video drops, one for the membership, one for the public, and we will press on. So, but we'll see you Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern for the Bigfoot news. And of course, next Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern for Squatch-D TV live. So on behalf of me and everybody, we want to wish everybody a happy and healthy week. Stay safe. God bless. And of course, keep on squatching, folks. Peace out.
Have a good night, guys.
Hey, folks, you've been watching Squatch-D TV. Join us each week, Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for the latest on the Bigfoot mystery. As always, we thank you for being our loyal viewers and encourage all to subscribe to our YouTube page at youtube.com/Steve Kulls. As always, have a great week. Stay safe. God bless. And keep on squatching.